Good afternoon and welcome to the June 11th, 2026 Capital Funding Protection Committee. And we're going to go ahead and call the meeting to order with the first being the call to order. The call to order. How about a roll call? Yes, thanks.
Paul Anderson,
Here.
Clara Andriola, Elise Bunkowski,
Here.
Charlene Bybee,
Here.
Chris Cobb,
Here.
Jean Herman, Justin Ivory,
Here.
Miguel Martinez, Devin Reese, Craig Westner.
Here.
We have a quorum.
All right, and if anyone does come in virtually, will you please just give us a heads up so we can include them in the conversation?
Yes, I will.
Thank you. All right, so we've moved through that. We'll go into item 2.01, approval of the minutes of the April 9th, 2026 meeting of the Capital Funding Protection Committee. Do we have any changes, any concerns with the minutes? Okay, what we'll do is we'll go ahead and open this up for public comment. It is an action item. Do we have any public comment?
Not on this item.
Okay, we'll bring it back, and if we don't have any other questions, do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion. I move that the Capital Funding Protection Committee approves the minutes of the April 9th, 2026 meeting as submitted.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion by Member Bybee, second by Member Cobb. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, passes unanimously. Item 2.02, approval of the minutes of the April 30th, 2026 meeting of Capital Funding Protection Committee. Do we have any changes or concerns with those minutes? All right, we'll bring it back to public comment. Do we have any public comment?
We have public comment from Adam Mayberry.
Welcome. Not used to it on that side, huh?
This might be the first public comment in my life. Good afternoon. My name is Adam Mayberry. I'm speaking on behalf of myself. I'm the current president of the Washoe County School Board as well. I've had the privilege of serving our community on this school board for nearly 5 years now, and during that time we've approved hundreds of millions of dollars for desperately needed capital projects, which has transformed our district and our community, every penny of which has come through this committee first and then come forward for approval with an additional layer of input and, in this case, protection. And these efforts would not have been nearly as successful and likely not even possible without the work of this committee. So very grateful for the support and dedication and the time that you've put into this. You've served our taxpayers, our board, and our students in a way which personifies in the true community spirit of collaboration and commitment to our youth and families, which inspires so many of us at Washoe County School District. And again, I want to thank you sincerely for your service. Just earlier this week, the board was presented with the most recent recommendation from this committee on some of our most complex programs and projects. Our board was able to discuss and consider this, along with additional options from staff. Today, that material and our board's recommendation will be presented to you. I look forward to your continued contributions. This work is not easy. None of us are strangers to the competing priorities and limited resources and the difficult decisions. The dynamic between the Board of Trustees and the Capital Funding Protection Committee is a unique one of which has, from my perspective, continues to demonstrate the highest level of civic engagement and process across our region. Maintaining that is all of our responsibilities as we continue to do the hard things for the right reasons. And I remain very grateful for the work this committee's done and the spirit of community from which it must be originated from. I also want to advocate for one of the recommendations that will be before you is a new administration building. I don't spend a lot of time in this building, but the time that I have spent, I've seen water dripping from the ceilings. I've seen issues with plumbing. I know many of our staff that have offices have to put their foods in plastic containers because of the rodent problems. The building is, I think, older than all of you behind the dais, including myself. And it's not the most attractive building to retain and keep a lot of our staff. The staff that work in this building support our teachers and our students every day. Just like the city of Sparks needs a new city hall, this organization needs a new administration building. So I appreciate your consideration. I appreciate your time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for giving me a few minutes.
All right, thank you very much for your comment. Appreciate it. Any other public comment?
No other public comment, but committee member Miguel Martinez has joined us.
Okay, thank you very much for recognizing that. And Miguel, thank you for joining us here. Okay, with that, we'll move on to the vote. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes from the April 30th meeting?
I'll make a motion.
Motion made by Member Cobb,
I'll second
a second by Member Ivory. Thank you. All in favor signify by saying aye.
it. Aye.
All opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you. And we'll move on to item 2.03, presentation, discussion, possible action on the revised fiscal year 2027 10-year capital improvement plan and forward the committee recommendation to the Board of Trustees for consideration and possible action. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. Thank you. My name's Adam Searcy, for the record. Today, we're going to present recommendations from the Board of Trustees that were heard and approved just earlier this week. We've got a larger number of slides today. I'm going to go through them quickly in the interest of time, but we felt that it was very important to take a little extra time to better understand what has been a lengthy and involved process, but truly a valuable one. By the end of this item, we hope to recap this and also reflect on what we have learned and how we can improve in the future. We really wanted to start from that point. Next slide, please. We wanted to start from that point up front, highlighting some of the key lessons learned, if you will, that I and many others on the team have reflected on. The first one I wanted to emphasize was the need, the value in really starting this conversation earlier in the fiscal year to give everyone more time and perhaps more iterations as we go through it.
And I'm Mark Mathers, Chief Financial Officer, for the record. As Adam noted, these are really collective thoughts and learnings from our executive team and others. I wanted to kind of interject on the second bullet point because I know this came up in the prior meeting, and I wanted to kind of double down on my comments and note that although we strive to be as transparent as possible, I think we slipped in this regard for the committee. We need to be more transparent, certainly, and highlight any newly proposed items in the CIP in the future, or just any items that have greatly changed, I'll just add. And so that was something that, honestly, we should have done a better job of, and we will do so in the future. So.
Thanks, Mark. Along those lines, the next bullet point, greater sensitivity to align presentations made to the community. There was clear confusion between, and frankly, inconsistencies between information we presented publicly elsewhere and the initial elements of the CIP going forward. So an emphasis and an opportunity to improve there. Noting that when changes are necessary, that they should first be iterated with the committee before going to the board. That was also a point of emphasis that we'll highlight throughout the presentation. And then finally, also wanted to recognize that all of us must continue to honor the reality that the CIP is not a fixed document into the future, and that annual revisions must reflect changing circumstances when necessary. So it's really a collective learning that we wanted to start from. Next slide, please. And Shannon, I don't know if you caught that text or that message, if you're able to share the screen. I think there was a message from Member Martinez that he's having a hard time seeing the presentation. It's a lot to juggle, Shannon. Sorry.
I tried to fix it.
All right, well, while you're working on that, I'll continue to narrate these slides, if that's all right. Excellent. Looks like he's seeing it. So as we discussed, the CIP is revised and approved annually. This is, of course, in part because of changing circumstances. One circumstance that we highlighted on this slide is enrollment forecasts and enrollment boundary changes. Just one of many examples of reasons why we have to revisit the CIP annually. Next slide, please. Another dynamic aspect of our CIP is just the actual implementation of it. Of course, as we develop projects and the details come into focus, oftentimes their needs and the timing of the projects do change. This is normal, and the information must be reflected in the CIP every year. One example that's highlighted on this slide was when the board in October 2025 approved basically a change to one of our projects that wasn't initially reflected in our updated CIP and should have been. So that's where I speak about aligning our presentations with our CIP, and this is an opportunity to improve as well. Next slide, please. The point here is really engagement and coordination with our community. We always collaboratively develop these projects with our community. These involve complex change, and these projects must be informed by our community, and it's important to ensure consistency between what is communicated publicly and what our CIP shows. Again, lots to unpack here on this slide, but just really a quick point of emphasis on the implementation phase between fiscal year cycles that informs the actual composition of the CIP. Next slide, please. So this is just a recap to offer a glimpse into the implementation, the complexity of the implementation. Our goal is always to continuously improve as we navigate these dynamic and challenging projects. But we wanted to begin with that before walking you through the last several months. As you can infer, we'll see this graphic repeatedly throughout the presentation, which is intended to elicit really an iterative and windy path that often is the development of these complex annual plans. Next slide, please. So this is not unfamiliar to you all, but I think it is important to restate, this is similar to most annual budget processes that begin with the work of staff to analyze our updated demands and compare them with our updated and projected resources. We work collaboratively with the business team to develop a CIP that can best match our needs within our resources. It's pretty much that basic of an exercise, except for forecasting 5 and in this case 10 years into the future really is a challenge. As you can see from this excerpt, and as you likely recall, you'll see a lot of excerpts. This is a graphic that was presented to the committee just a couple of months ago. But the rate of construction costs compared to the rate of our revenue growth is now and will continue to be an influencing factor over our CIPs. This is just the work, and this is what begins really throughout the winter and into the spring. Next slide, please. Again, you're going to see this graphic repeatedly today, and you can see the kind of the summary highlights on the implementation and the development phase, just to summarize each step of the process. Next slide, please. Also on this slide, you're going to see these stars appearing to demonstrate that in between each major milestone, staff is listening and refining the work based on the important feedback and additional analysis. This is also a healthy part of the process, but one that we wanted to note because in some instances of these iterations or back and forth, new information was presented that created confusion and frustration in the process, and we want to speak to that a couple of different times today. So ahead of our first meeting in April of the committee, we had initiated a years-long implementation of the prior CIP and staff analysis developing this initial draft FY27 CIP. That brings us really to the April 9th committee meeting recap. Next slide, please. So on April 9th, as you likely recall, the initial version of the CIP was presented to this committee. So this included a detailed description of the financial challenges that we kind of touched on earlier, as well as changes to scopes, including specifically reductions to projects at Sparks Middle School, Trainer, Booth, and Wooster, then recommending modernizations rather than reconstructions in the coming years, as well as, at that time, the inclusion of funding for textbooks as well as administrative facilities. So again, as you likely recall, there was robust discussion on all of those topics. There was also public comment. We heard in-person public comment primarily from the Wooster community around projects associated with that school. And ultimately, the motion was to approve the CIP as presented with the elimination of funding for textbooks. That was April 9th. Next slide, please. I will note that motion actually was not a unanimous approval, and really highlight that only to just reflect the differing views on the complex topics. Not everyone was aligned, and ultimately, I think it was a 4-2 vote that day. So documenting this milestone in the process, moving on to the next slide, please, and acknowledging that staff continued to listen and reflect on the feedback from the meeting on the 9th, as well as continued input that we received following that meeting, and in an effort to present the recommendation from the committee, as well as to support the board with additional analysis on this complex item, staff developed and included alternative options that were not previously presented to the committee. Again, that was a source of learning for us going forward that we'd like to present everything to the committee first before going to the board. On the next slide, you'll see on April 14th, the Board of Trustees met and received a presentation on the scope as it was presented to the committee, but also these alternative options excerpt here that included a large reduction in proposed funding for the admin facility and a redirection of that funding towards school projects, restoring the scopes at Sparks Middle, Trainer, and Booth to full reconstruction levels. So this meeting was even more engaged and filled with discussion across all of the topics, with particular attention again being paid to the timing and scope of the projects at Wooster. This meeting also included public comment from the Wooster community, as well as current and former elected officials from outside the district, including a member from the Capital Funding Protection Committee who provided public comment. All of this was extremely valuable, resulted in an amended motion approved by the board to approve the alternative recommendations, as I just described, as well as an amendment regarding Wooster to devise a revised plan, a phased plan to maintain progress at Wooster High School. Next slide, please. So this was the first point, and I want to emphasize this point again, that our own board policy requires that if the board does not agree with a recommendation from the committee initially, they must send it back to the committee for further reconsideration. I think that that's noteworthy. There's no committees of the school board, nor to my knowledge are there comparable committees elsewhere informing local elected bodies who are provided with such a level of authority, and I think that should be recognized and appreciated. Anyway, of course, in the ensuing weeks, on the next slide, staff worked to continue to incorporate that feedback from the board, that feedback from the public, the direction we received to prepare materials for the April 30th committee meeting. Next slide, please. Meeting out of sequence, as you guys have graciously obliged us now multiple times, we met with the committee on April 30th, presenting the recommendations from the board, as well as other information. Concerns were strongly expressed regarding the funding of textbooks from capital funds. More direct questions and input were received from the committee regarding the scope and timing of admin facilities, as well as Wooster High School campus improvements. So this as many of you recall, was a robust discussion which again ended in a split vote, appearing to reflect the differing views of the members across the broad and complex item which is this CIP. Next slide, please. Ultimately, the Capital Funding Protection Committee voted to approve the CIP as proposed with changes including a full reconstruction of Wooster and elimination of funding for admin, facilities, and textbooks. So, next slide, please. In the interim weeks, staff again aspired to listen keenly to the input received both on the record and through a variety of other channels. And similar to our efforts ahead of the April 14th board meeting, staff attempted to demonstrate humility and flexibility, reevaluating all assumptions in an effort to demonstrate to the board a workable solution. Next slide, please. So on May 12th, materials for this meeting were posted ahead of the meeting and remain publicly available today. But I want to emphasize that this material was pulled, this item was pulled from the agenda and was not actually heard publicly or voted on. Staff did continue to receive public input on this CIP and various alternatives. Next slide, please. So just to wrap up the recap, this has obviously been an iterative and ongoing, multifaceted effort. Staff has tried to listen to all input, reviewed all available data, and worked to develop a more balanced CIP for consideration. As we are about to walk through it, this will be the same content that was presented to the board on Tuesday. I should have prefaced that a little bit. The recommendation, as I conclude the presentation with, was approved as proposed by the board. So this is the same CIP that the board recommended. We return to the Capital Funding Protection Committee for additional consideration. Again, really wanted to walk through the process and the recap because it has been so many twists and turns. I think it's been very informative, very healthy for us to reflect on what worked, what didn't, and just how we got to where we are today. But next slide is where we are today. The CIP, of course, includes a long list and a variety of projects and proposed funding, but to highlight several projects that have changed over the course of this development process, Sparks Middle School and the Trainer Elementary School on the Trainer campus. At one point were proposed as modernizations, but in alignment with the FMP, the Facility Modernization Plan, we now in this version of the CIP are proposing to fund full reconstructions of a new middle school on the current Sparks Middle School campus, and ultimately a new elementary school on the Trainer campus. Again, that's in alignment with the FMP recommendations, and will actually likely look and feel somewhat similar to what is transpiring today between Vaughn and Pine. So that remains unchanged, actually, from the last version of the CIP that this committee saw. Next slide, please. Similar in the fact that this has changed from April 9th to April 30th, but since April 30th, the recommended scope and budgets for Booth Elementary School remain the same. The proposal is to fully fund a reconstruction on the Booth campus, aligning with what's going on at Loader as we speak, and ultimately consolidating that enrollment feeding up into Vaughn. So this looks similar. We just really wanted to highlight it because it has been one of the larger variables in the CIP. Next slide, please. This is a slide with an awful lot of numbers and an awful lot of words on it that, depending on how you squint at it, can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. But I really felt strongly about continuing to include this because, to me, it sends a message regarding our commitment to this community and the potential that these investments have to stimulate secondary and tertiary growth for the community that it serves. I'll just leave it at that. This is very exciting in my opinion. I don't want to dive into the details about nickels and dimes. We are going all in for the Wooster community, proud to do it and proud to work through the details with this committee, with the public, and with our board. Next slide, please. Speaking of the Worcester community, this is an alternative scope that was presented to the school board on Tuesday and recommended for your consideration here today. The alternative scope for Worcester campus now includes the full reconstruction scope funded at an up to $164.2 million budget. And the first slide to describe this mentions that any solutions, of course, must be context sensitive and truly value add. There's a lot to unpack there, but really what that means is that we don't believe that demolishing the school and building a brand new 3-story rectangle is the right solution for that community for a variety of reasons, and that it's really going to take a thoughtful and deliberative process to develop the right solution, but the right solution on that scale of reconstruction at $160 million is what's being proposed in this CIP. Next slide, please. To that end, we're proposing a phased implementation, one that begins as soon as next school year. You'll see funding in attachment B associated with FY27, modest in nature, but a study that is led by the Office of Academics, of course supported by the business and operations team, but one that speaks to the community about their interests, about their needs, and what makes Worcester special today, and what would make Worcester attractive and valuable going into the future. We highlight the similar process that we went through with the community regarding the Debbie Smith CTE Academy, not to imply that, Worcester is going to become a CTE Academy in the future, but rather to illustrate how long this process can and may take. So you'll see the timing of the funding in the CIP mirroring these phases and over a similar period of time. But that's what it takes to do a project of that complexity and that scale properly, and that's what's being proposed and funded in this CIP. Next slide, please. This is a little bit more of an illustration of what that might look like. I've had a couple of these conversations with folks, and they start to talk to me about, how much would it cost to build a building like this, or what if we put the gymnasium on this quadrant of the campus? And I said, that's an interesting conversation, but that's not where we want to start. We want to start with ideas and Post-it notes on a board. And these are actual images from recent similar processes that we've executed with our partners in academics and external consultants and with our community to try to develop plans to inform complex decisions and projects. So that is really a 3-slide description of what's being proposed in this CIP with respect to Worcester, a full reconstruction over a phased implementation up to $164 million. Next slide, please. Also included in this CIP is the full funding for new admin facilities. This had been previously proposed at the April 30th meeting of the Capital Funding Protection Committee, was eliminated and is being proposed to be restored at the same levels that it was previously. This excerpt on this slide was a part of the material that was posted on May 12th but not heard publicly. And I chose to excerpt this one to highlight just how harmful the current conditions are and just how much potential value the investments in this area would provide both to the central services staff at the district, but also, and of course, to our schools. I feel this is very important. Next slide, please. The revised CIP, as I mentioned, recommends that the previously approved budget of $108 million be restored. We also wanted to highlight that in that May 12th meeting materials that were not heard publicly, a future admin facility AFMP presentation intends to propose the elimination of the Worcester campus from consideration for the purposes of those facilities. We still need to build out suitable facilities, but in those publicly posted documents, and it is still our intention to describe this to the board publicly, we no longer intend to pursue Worcester as a potential home for the admin facility. Also want to highlight on this slide that in your attachment B, B, to this item, we've adjusted the distribution of funding slightly. It's still 108 million, but reflecting slightly more in FY '27 to preserve the opportunity for potential acquisition of existing commercial properties, rather than previously $8 million for potential design. Bottom line, the recommendation is to restore the funding for this needed project as previously proposed at 108 million. So that's really the brief description of not only the history of how we got here, but the most dynamic aspects of this CIP. As I started, we talk about the needs and the scope, but it must work hand in hand with the resources. So the next slide, I want to turn it back to our CFO, Mr. Mathers.
Thanks, Adam. As Adam covered early on in this presentation, obviously resources are a huge component of the preparation of any budget or capital improvement program. So just to, again, go back in time, when we first started modeling kind of wants and, where we might propose projects in terms of their scope and phasing, we saw that there was insufficient resources to cover what was then close to a $2.6 billion 10-year CIP. So we did rescope projects, and since then, really all of the versions of the CIP that the board and this committee have seen have programmed 1.8 billion of projects over 10 years. Still a monumental CIP compared to almost any other local agency in the state. But I think, the question I'm sensing from some is, okay, so the proposal today is to restore funding for the admin building at the lower amount compared to where we started, the lower amount being $108 million. And not to fund textbooks. So I want to highlight that textbooks are not being proposed to be restored to the CIP. But still, how are we able to do that, given the lower resources we have? And so, and I think by virtue of the fact that during a meeting, it's kind of impossible to estimate what a full rebuild of Worcester would have been. Right? And so it kind of set up an either-or kind of dynamic, I think. And so I wanted to cover how we're able to fund that admin building and the full rebuild of Worcester. So going back to mid-April, how we were able to fund those 3 rebuilds of Booth, Sparks Middle School, and Trainer was that, again, we downsized the funding allocation for the admin building from $188 million to $108. So that was a net cost of 0. So we were able to accomplish that, first of all. So really the difference between, so that, again, admin building continued to be funded in the CIP versions that both the board and the committee saw, but now at a smaller amount, which then was reallocated to those 3 schools. So what has changed most recently then is the additional funding needed for a full rebuild of Worcester High School. That is $85 million. That gets you to the 164 that you see today. So that was an increase of $85 million. But then the committee and now the board has agreed not to fund textbooks out of the CIP, so that's a reduction of $33 million. So the net increase is $52 million. Okay, great, Mark, how are you going to do that is kind of the question, right? One may ask. And the answer is, in all of those prior versions of this CIP, again, we do a projection of revenues over 10 years, which is, right, is our best shot at that. But, we don't know how things will play out based on the course of the economy here in Washoe County. But, I think we're pretty fiscally conservative about it and allowed for an ending projected reserves of $204 million. At the same time, as we explained to the board and you, we wanted to preserve future bonding capacity for projects for years 11 through 20. So we had $204 million of projected reserves at the end of year 10, plus an additional $300 million of bonding capacity between rollover bonds and WC1 bonds. So a little over $500 million of funding right from the get-go in year 11 for future projects in that next 10-year time period. Then, of course, we know we would, expect to see increases to property tax revenues and sales tax revenues throughout years through 11 through 20, providing additional bonding capacity. So we start with $500 million, and then it goes up from there. What we're proposing is, based on that net increase of $52 million that I talked about, taking that from projected reserves at the end of year 10. So rather than $204 million being projected at the end of year 10, we would have $152 million of projected reserves at the end of year 10. Still a significant amount. And what I expressed to the board, in my professional opinion, that still is a very fiscally conservative position. Again, we haven't blown our wad in years 1 through 10. We've allowed for remaining bonding capacity. And in our metaphor, we haven't maxed out the credit cards in year 10. So it's still, I think, a fiscally conservative approach where we've left $152 million on the table for the future. A lot of times, agencies don't do that. They spend the entire amount of projected resources. We're not. And so I think we can do this while still being financially responsible. And so, if you have questions, I'm happy to answer that, in greater depth if you'd like. But that is how we accomplished both a full rebuild of Wooster and a new admin building, albeit at a much lower cost than, what we anticipated at the beginning of the CIP process.
Thanks, Mark. Next slide, please. This is just a conclusion slide. I wanted to, kind of wrap it up, just really highlighting the complexity of this work, but also really renewing our commitment to the application of what we refer to as our guiding principles here at the district. Humility, continuous improvement, our commitment to listen, learn, and improve, and really just highlighting that, on balance, as with most successful processes, when the final outcome is different than the initial proposal, that finished product is typically better off for that engagement, due mostly to the larger number of voices that helped compose it. We believe that this is the case in this instance, and that while we're always striving to continuously improve, ultimately the process here is working. On the next couple of slides, just kind of wrap it up with the presentation, or pardon me, the recommendation. This is literally the recommendation from the Board of Trustees highlighting the final aspect, or the final 2 lines, directing staff to return this recommendation to the Capital Funding Protection Committee for their consideration and possible action. That brings us to today, which is on the final slide, that the Capital Funding Protection Committee accepts the recommendation of the Board of Trustees for this revised 10-year CIP and forward your recommendation to the Board of Trustees for final consideration and possible action. Thank you all for your input, for your patience, for your candor, and for your time, of course, convening multiple times out of sequence, helping us and helping this community steward these important investments. Thank you.
And yeah, I'll start off with just saying thank you guys for spending the time working with the Board of Trustees as well as this committee. We all have the same goals of wanting to make sure we're providing the best facilities for our kids. But sometimes it's a little bit different view that we're each looking at it from. And I appreciate the work that you guys have done to get us here. And likewise, moving forward, I think, lessons learned. I don't expect that it'll be this crazy going forward, but I think starting the process earlier, like you mentioned, I think it'll help us kind of work through the bumps along the way as we get there. With that, we'll open it up to the members for questions. Mr. Ivory.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hey, I want to be the first one or second one out there to say, I think we kind of showed the public how the sausage was made, and I think at the end of the day, I think we ended up with the right outcome. I think this is exactly how the system is supposed to work. Where when we don't agree on things, we make people step over them, come back, goes back and forth a couple times. When it comes to budgets, I know President of the Trustees is here. He knows that budgets aren't supposed to be easy, right? What you get with an easy budget is you get a lot of wasteful spending. So budgets are supposed to be hard. This is a difficult process because it's supposed to be a difficult process. Nobody wants to not fund textbooks, right? No, there's not one person up here on this panel that says, hey, you know what, we don't want to fund those. It's just that our role in what we're doing here, I feel as though we're here per the taxpayer to look out for their interests also. They don't always get a voice in everything that comes in front of this committee. We're that voice that's supposed to work this way. So, I'm very happy that the textbooks have been removed. Mostly because, and I think it's important that this committee understands, we're talking about, $30-something million. It's not the $3 million you got to look at with stuff coming out. Those are the one-year expenditures. But to this committee, they're $30 and $40 million expenditures for the money that we get to spend here. That means that's like an extra elementary school every 20 years. And I know that there was a time when this committee was first established that we would have been elated to be building a new elementary school every 20 years. We did not have those funds. We have them now. It's important that we protect them, but I kudos to the staff for coming back and there's been many times that staff has really rather surprised me when because a lot of times I feel like they're kind of like we are, they're like a dog with a bone. Like, we're not going to let this, we're not just going to roll over and say, hey, this isn't working. We're going to come up with a better idea or better example. I also would like to take a minute and thank Mr. Mathers. Him and Tammy Zimmerman met with me on Tuesday of this week. I had a concern at the last meeting about textbooks being funded out of the capital funding because it was a line item in last year's CIP that I didn't catch. Mr. Mathers took the time, showed me basically what had happened, just so the committee's clear. What basically happened is that money was earmarked because in per the AG opinion, they feel as though it could come out as equipment. So it was earmarked. At the end of the year, it was not used from capital funding. So what ended up happening was a check was righted, the log, I guess, of it from the general fund. So that money never came out of capital funding. It ended up being reimbursed by capital or by the general fund. So I appreciate the time that you took to explain that to me. And that's pretty much what I've got to say.
Any member Bybee?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Want to thank you guys for the work that you've done, and I think this process back and forth has been really valuable. I think we've learned, like you've already stated up there, some of the lessons of how you can always do something better. We never stop learning, no matter how old we get or how long we've all been around, that we learn from how to always get better at what we're doing. And I appreciate the effort. And at times, it was a little bit of turbulence that I'd like to use for my vernacular. But at the end of the day, I think what we came up with today is super important. I appreciate Mr. Mathers explaining and looking at some, not creative, but another option, because we were just going to improve other schools, and now we're going to reconstruct them, and then taking the admin building, which I agree is super important, scaling that down, but then looking at our reserves and the ability to learn to use some reserves so that, how do we want to do everything, right? But we all don't have all the money to do everything we want to do. So the fact that you looked at reserves, take the admin building and scale that down. I did have one question on Worcester, and you listened to our Worcester community and public meetings, and I know it's a fairly long process for Worcester. It's not happening next year. But I did have a question as I looked at your info on Worcester, and the projected enrollment is dropping pretty dramatically. So when I'm looking at our chart there, the 3-year and up to 15-year is only in the low 50% capacity. And as we look at that rebuild, obviously, we'll be taking into consideration, we're not going to build a school the size that we would to Monty Branch or Spanish Springs or someplace that is in an area, even Hug, that has all the growth, that you will be considering what that projected enrollment, and we can't guess exactly, but that could help us on the financial side of things, or another utilization, because you talk a lot about programs that are there and what possible additional programs. But I would hate to take all the money and build a Worcester that's at half empty, I guess is my point. So can you assure me as we get there, those are, I'm guessing they're considerations that you'll be making along the way? Because a lot of the information on Worcester was kind of theoretical and aspirational, and I'm like, okay, what are we really saying here? So that was the only question that I had. Thank you.
Shannon, can you give me, I think, slide 23, please? Double check. No, forward a couple. One more? There we go. So I chose the words context sensitive. First of all, I really appreciate the question and, the acknowledgement that that's a little vague, right? It's vague because this is a plan that we have to develop together. But it must be context sensitive. Some of the context around a new Worcester High School is absolutely enrollment projections. But it's also the community's interest. What makes Worcester special today? What is desired in a future Worcester High School by that community? And then the statement of value add. What might make Worcester attractive into the future? So of course, whatever vision we compose together with the community will inform our design. That is infused with data that says, I need a building this big or with this much capacity, but also with the spaces to bring to life these types of programs or activities. The vision that we hope to establish next school year with the community is one that does rebuild a Worcester High School in the future years that is right-sized for that community, but is also attractive and exciting and invigorating for that community. That's a very vague answer, but hopefully it sheds a little bit more color onto the vision, and it really is a vision. There's challenges. There's physical challenges, there's demand challenges, there's financial challenges. We're going to talk about all of it, but we're going to try to frame it in a what is possible type of outlook and find just the right solution for that community.
Let me jump to Mr. Martinez. Do you have any questions or comments?
Yeah, Adam Searcy for the record. Appreciate the question, Member Martinez. That's the thinking. Of course, we have an admin facility master plan study that is still in progress. As I described, it's intending, our next update to the board, as was posted on May 12th, is intending to not only remove Wooster from future consideration, but also expand the consideration to existing commercial real estate. So to the best of our knowledge, that's, how these budgets are sometimes composed, that the FY27 funding might provide us the resources necessary to acquire a building or property to begin this process, and that any remodel or TI to that building or future new construction would be funded in FY29 in that second amount. Again, very much dependent on the outcome of the study, the availability of property, et cetera, but this is our attempt to illustrate the way the funding might be timed to accommodate outcomes like what I just described. I really want to say it carefully, folks, so that this isn't perceived as a promise. This is our best efforts to use our current best thinking and demonstrate the resources necessary and the timing in which to bring it to life. It very well may change, but if it does, it will come before this committee again, absolutely. I hope that answers your question as well.
Thank you. Mr. Westner.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to apologize. I read the minutes for this, preparation for this meeting, and I was traveling in April, and I wasn't here. And it looked like it was a really lively meeting, and I wish I would have been here. But I want to echo some things that Member Ivory had mentioned, and particularly on the books. I was actively involved with WC1 trying to get it passed. And I know that an AG said that, you could look at that as equipment. I get that. But what was sold to the public during this whole process was for facilities. And that doesn't include books. And I was very happy to see what the committee did. I don't want to rehash the issue. I just want to commend the committee for catching that, for you guys working with the situation, and this process as a whole, I think, has all gone very well. I was very happy to hear what you had to say today, what I read in the minutes coming up to this in preparation for this meeting. So I think the system has worked as it is intended. So that's all I wanted to say. Thanks.
Any other? Mr. Cobb.
As everybody said, thank you, and probably thank you can't go enough for what the staff has done here and prepared for us. We landed, I think, exactly where we needed to. A lot of input from the committee here, from your trustees, from everybody that came and spoke. A lot of effort by your team. And you've said something several times. I hope us as committee members and the public here, it's a plan. This is a huge plan if you're saying it's a 10-year plan. I think many of the elected members up here would say, if you look at a 5-year CIP, year 1 is hard and fast, year 2 is 80%. Anything after that, it will change. Things change. Any plan that gets 3 years away from it, things happen. Enrollments change. Growth changes. Revenue changes. So I appreciate you are laying out a plan. You've laid out a plan budgetarily that looks good. We don't know what's going to happen with construction cost. They are going through the roof. That could change this plan. Enrollments can. You have a good path forward for us, absolutely, for next year. Thank you for seeing administration get back in here. Thank you, Mr. President, for bringing that up. This building impacts every student. Everybody who works here impacts the students. You have to rip that Band-Aid off at some point because everything that people do here impacts down. So I truly appreciate all the efforts. It is a plan, hard and fast next year, but we have to understand it can change in the future because things change. So I appreciate all your efforts as a group. Thank you.
You good? I'm good. All right. Just one more comment. I just wanted to thank President Mayberry for his pointing out to those of us from Sparks that have been faced with throwing good money away on an old building. And we cleared out our offices to make room for staff just for it to be flooded, and all the work and money that was spent on it gone for nothing. So yeah, the same things that we're experiencing in our 60-year-old building are a lot of what you all are facing here with this admin building. I understand the efficiencies and the costs incurred in having people travel and all that. So I appreciate likewise the need for a new facility, kind of like the transportation side. People go, well, wait a minute, it's not a school. But wait a minute, if you can't get the kids to and from school safely, then you're not doing your job. So it's a give and take for sure, but I do understand the need for the admin building as well. So with that, we'll, no more questions? With that, we'll open it up for public comment.
Pablo Nava Duran.
Good morning. Capital Community. My name is Pablo Duran, and I'm a Ward 3 NAP members. So I do support the food we built at Worcester High School. But Adam Caesar mentioned that the woman is down. If you look at Worcester capacity of women, is down. But I do not support $210 million rebuild of Worcester High School. And Adam Mayberry just left, so I want to congratulate Adam Mayberry for the new Spark City Council Ward 4. If you could hear me, Adam Mayberry, but he left. So it's back to Worcester's part. So yes, so I do not support $210 million on rebuild of Worcester High School. It's similar like Huck High School, but I do support the study of study of Worcester High School, what the new Worcester High School community look like. It could be turned to CT High School, is what the community wants. Full high school, hybrid, something to think about that. So like a new Debbie, if a Worcester High School become like a new Debbie Smith to the economy, I fully support that. So I want to make sure that they get the research they need. That Worcester High School should remain. The IB program and my lingo program should remain at Worcester High School when whoever transform new CT High School, to High School, competitive high school, any mod hybrid high school. So I do support that. So Worcester High School community had been difficult hardship to come to their field school, elementary school, after elementary school in Central Reno being closed down. Corbett and Veteran are going to close the next school year with the new Lower Elementary School and then Modern Asia Booth High School, soon to be rebuilt Booth Elementary School, and a new Von Mill School. So closing down Worcester High School, that will create distraction for the community. There's always have construction, but closing Worcester High School and busing to another high school, that's too much distraction for this community. And also, I want to mention that the Pine Mills, the new elementary school Pine campus, I mentioned it's not some for Worcester, but I don't know why, but you could call it Ward 3, but down Ward 3, same thing, Ward 3. So call it Ward 3. So make sure the language is fixed. So thank you, and have a great summer and maybe in math matter.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
No other public comment on this item.
All right, then we'll bring it back, and do we have anyone that's willing to make a motion? I'll make a motion. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Capital Funding Protection Committee accepts the Board of Trustees' decision for the revised fiscal year 2027 10-year capital improvement plan and to forward the committee's recommendation to the Board of Trustees for final consideration and possible action.
Thank you. We have a motion made by Member Bybee. Do we have a second? Okay, a second by Member Bankowski. And all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you. And we'll move on to item 2.04, presentation, discussion, possible action to recommend approval of the fiscal 2027 capital renewal plan in the amount of $50 million for capital projects throughout the Washoe County School District as part of the 2025-2026 D Major Projects Program, and to forward the recommendation to the Board of Trustees for approval.
Thank you, Chair Anderson. For the record, Tammy Zimmerman, Chief Facilities Management Officer. And here with me today is our Program Planning Group Director, Cameron Amati. He's been with us approximately 6 months. He has been a major author of this capital renewal plan. That is part of the structure of the programming group, is to work on the capital renewal plan as well as the CIP in the future as we get to those, and really bringing our department together and helping us plan the actual program. And so he is going to take the steering wheel for the majority of this presentation, so be kind.
Welcome.
Thank you, Chief Zimmerman. Good afternoon, everyone. For the record, Cameron Amati, Director of the Program Planning Group with the Facility Management Department. And today I'm here to present on the fiscal year 2027 Capital Renewal Program. Next slide, please, Shannon. Oh. Before we dive into the program, I just wanted to take a second and highlight the sheer magnitude and amount of projects that this group puts together and that you oversee. Over 100 projects in this last year alone. We have up on the slide here photos of 2 of our major projects. The one on the left is E. Otis Vaughn Middle School, and the one on the right is the new Stead Elementary School. Both of those scheduled to open this fall, this school year. So the sheer volume of projects is really it's really an amazing undertaking that this group and that you guys oversee. So the capital renewal plan, we start this plan in the program back in December. It's really a robust process. We have a facility condition index system, which has all of the assets for the school district. And basically, we start from there. Projects are identified, and then they're vetted with maintenance and operations staff. So we send maintenance and operations out into the field to look at these assets and look at these projects that we're putting on this plan for presentation to you. So we see what needs to be repaired. The plan that's in front of you today, and I believe you have a PDF copy that's attached to the presentation as well, is divided into a couple of different parts in this PowerPoint presentation so that we can dive into a couple of the disciplines that are on the plan. One of our largest buckets is carpentry, and that covers everything from floors up to the roofs. So we really want a conducive environment for learning, a dry environment. Once the roofs go bad and leaks start happening, it's not good for the school. We also touch on electronics. For electronics, we look at equipment that it maybe is outdated and has parts that can no longer be ordered to replace and fix that equipment. So we look at replacing electronics. Safety is also a big concern here. We look at replacing intercom systems in the schools. We also look at the grounds. We look at replacing playground equipment and also energy projects that are aimed at saving the school district operating costs and utility costs. This slide here is the mechanical and electrical and plumbing discipline. It's probably one of our largest buckets on the capital renewal plan. And really, we like to highlight that this one is to create a warm, conducive environment for learning. A conducive environment for learning. Warm in the winter and cool in the summer. So we focus on heating and cooling systems. This is the final slide of the plan. Pavement is another one of our largest buckets of the renewal plan. There's a lot of pavement in the district, a lot of parking lots, but also playgrounds and bus routes.
Tammy Zimmerman for the record. Just want to jump in and highlight the safety and security item. I know I was at Safe and Healthy Schools a couple months ago with Member Bybee. We have on there restroom safety upgrades, and I had spoken to being back to you guys at the board and talking about that. We are highlighting those restroom safety upgrades based off of Safe and Healthy Schools recommendations, as well as the vape detections in the middle school. And we feel, based off of that feedback, we've proactively included additional funds in here for that so that we can take care of those systems.
This next slide here shows the budget broken down into percentages. And you can see those large buckets and disciplines that we highlighted earlier, like carpentry and roofing, mechanical and electrical and plumbing, and paving. Those are really our three largest buckets of the capital renewal plan. And that concludes our presentation on the capital renewal plan. We have a recommendation for you on the slide up here. And thank you again for your time.
All right, thank you. Any questions from the members? Yes, Mr. Cobb.
Thank you both. Are you still doing your roofing assessments? Is that?
We are still doing roofing assessments. We do paving assessments as well. So we do that, and that helps us to prioritize them even further than some of our assessment team being out there. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Cobb. Member Martinez, any questions from you? Okay. Okay. And actually, I did have one, and I think you have it in here, but I just wanted to double check. So out of the 50 million, how much of it is preventive maintenance versus reactive maintenance? I see in this slide, it says 17% for repairs. Does that include, is that all of the reactive maintenance, or how would you classify?
This slide here, MEP repairs, mechanical and electrical and plumbing. So that is repairs and or replacements of mechanical equipment, depending on on where it is in the life cycle.
And yeah, I guess I was just trying to dial into because if you're doing the facility condition index, the annual inspections, how much is then preventive maintenance versus the reactive? I guess that's what I'm trying to drive at.
So preventative maintenance is done within our general fund and our maintenance shops. So that is a different bucket than this. These are repairs where we may be repairing by replacing pieces and components of a system to renew it, to have another extended life. So preventative maintenance, just like our cooling towers where we go in and seal them and clean those up, we're doing that on the maintenance side out of the general fund portion. And we actually have a work order system that lists our preventative maintenance schedules in there that our team follows. So it's done in a different bucket.
All right, that's comforting to know. Thank you, appreciate it. Any other questions? Let me see here. This is an action item. So if we don't have any other questions, we'll open it up to public comment.
Pablo Nava Duran. No public comment.
All right, thank you. We'll bring it back to the board for a motion.
I'll make a motion if you'll flip to that slide. There we go. All right. I recommend that the Capital Funding Protection Committee recommend to the Board of Trustees approval of the FY 2027 Capital Renewal Program in the amount of $50 million to include the projects throughout the Washoe County School District.
Okay, we have a motion made by Member Cobb, a second,
I'll second.
made by Member Wessner. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Passes unanimously. All right, thank you very much, and we'll move on to item 2.05, presentation, discussion, possible action to recommend approval for design phase funding for the Sparks Middle School reconstruction in the amount of $1 million as part of the 2025-2026 D Major Projects Program, and to forward the recommendation to the Board of Trustees for approval. Good afternoon.
Hi, I'm Teresa Polson. I'm the Director of Design for the Capital Projects. And I have with me here today Caitlin Davis, who is one of our project managers in our design department. She'll be managing this project and co-presenting with me today. Let's see. So we're here to talk about Sparks Middle School and the design for the reconstruction of this project. The reconstruction of Sparks Middle School was approved in the 2023 FMP. It was approved by the board at that time. As part of that process, or as part of the FMP, Trainer Middle School is also due to be closed, and a new elementary school will be built on that site. The kids from Trainer are planned to move into the Sparks Middle School. The current enrollments at those two schools are shown on the screen here. There are about 1,100 students at both of those schools. The projection is significantly dropping over the next 10 years, but our planning department obviously will do their normal analysis and make recommendations to zoning over the next year or so. Any questions on my slides thus far?
Any questions? All right, thank you.
I'll hand it over to Caitlin.
Okay, we'll give her all the hard questions.
Again, for the record, my name is Caitlin Davis. Thank you for having me. This is my first time presenting, so I'm very excited to be here. So, as you can see in this slide, on the left, the overall site plan, you can see proximity of Sparks Middle School to Trainer Middle School. For the new Sparks Middle School, the design layout and construction phasing will be similar to Vaughn and O'Brien Middle Schools that we've approved previously. Construction will be phased and consisting of constructing the new building on the existing sports fields. Students and staff will then move over for building opening. The existing Sparks Middle School will be demolished, and the new sports fields will fill the space of the removed building. As you might be able to see in the plan on the right, the entrance for the new Sparks Middle School will now be on Sullivan Lane. Opio Park to the north is owned by City of Sparks. To complete the work, we will need to discuss a boundary line adjustment with the city, planning to mirror the current site layout. We've also had preliminary discussions with the city to plan to relocate the tennis courts already. Okay. Our pre-design phase estimate, so currently we're asking for $1 million. Architecture includes conceptual and schematic design phases. Again, this is a Vaughn and O'Brien Middle School prototype. Also requires the phase constructing the new build, moving between the old and new schools, existing building demo, and constructing the new sports fields. Experience with the last two schools has allowed us to pursue a hard bid construction funding request. So in addition to the architectural, conceptual, and schematic phases, we're asking for money to fund the survey and topography assessment, geotechnical consultant, traffic consultant, investigative activities, and then also working with the city on the boundary line adjustment. And our next steps forward, thank you, Teresa. Our next steps forward, so in August, we plan to come back and request the remaining design funding. In February 2027, we anticipate construction funding requests, so we'll be back again. June 2027, we hope to start construction, and then we are looking forward to a fall 2029 school opening. And that is it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Yes, Mr. Westner.
I see that the capacity is 1,400 students. Is that correct for Sparks Middle School? That's the design capacity. And then you have 1,166 students between the two schools now, which is somewhat less, so it's about, what, 80%. And then you're seeing a drop over the next 10 years. So I guess my question is, are we overbuilding capacity, or is there some future plan that we're not aware of that redistributes students to maintain that capacity?
So the size of the school is yet to be determined, right? We know we have a typical middle school size for our new schools, but until we do our full analysis and look at some zoning scenarios and options, the size of the school is yet to be determined.
Okay, I just read 1,400 here in those.
Yeah.
That's what I was going off of.
Yeah, understood.
So I guess it's going to be appropriately sized.
Yes,
Thanks.
thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, Ms. Bybee.
So on the, obviously, I'm concerned about working with the city of Sparks. So on the field, the school, we're going to do like we've been doing in the other Vaughn, Pine, or O'Brien, moving the school building itself to the existing fields. Are those fields the school districts? They're the school districts, correct? They're not the city.
Yes, I believe so.
Okay, so the boundary you're talking about is up at OPO
Yeah, so
Park
you can
and
see
the
there's like kind of
courts,
like
the
a,
tennis courts?
yeah, there's sort of a white line that separates the Sparks Risley
Okay.
property, and then to
Right.
the north is the OPO Park. It's sort of that kind of curved shape. So, I'm sorry, I cut you off about the
No.
tennis courts.
No, okay, so the white line helps. So
Yeah.
so you've got to readjust that boundary because your red line comes into where the city of Sparks is. And then is it going to take out those tennis courts that we just spent money for pickleball courts recently?
Yes, so the footprint of the new
That's
building.
that's what jumped out. I'm like, we
Yeah.
just made them pickleball courts and spent some money on that.
Yes, so our intent is to obviously give those back to you guys, so we will take that space and then relocate it on an area that works for you guys, I think. So once we kind of work through the boundary line adjustment, we're not intending to take away any land from the city of Sparks. We just sort of need to like massage that line to allow us to fit the school that we need.
Okay, and then you'll be putting,
Yes.
like you did at the other middle schools, you'll be putting those fields back because I know the community, the lack of flat fields throughout the community obviously is dire need for that. So that will do the same thing. It'll make where the school is now will become the fields.
Yes.
Just like we've been doing at the other schools.
Yes, correct.
Okay, thank you.
Just think newer, better. Newer, better.
Just thinking pickleball and I didn't even play.
Any other questions? Mr. Martinez? All right. With that, we'll go ahead and move to public comment. Do we have public comment?
Pablo Nava Duran.
Board 3 members and CM Reno. So I do support a full rebuild of Spark Middle School. You know, I know the moment concern for trainer and Spark Middle School have been dropping for about 10%, and combining those schools, definitely not enough for like the full rebuild like O'Brien and Vaughn Middle School type. But I think you should add the Word Middle School into the system, with moving them to the Spark Middle School. That'll give them the full side middle school with the elective. I think it's something to think about, Adam and Tammy Zimmerman, you know, for the elective. official for elective. We want to make sure the zoning should take place for this fall before we can make a decision on design of a new middle school. We don't want to overspend on building that have less, that will under-utilize those new buildings. So it's like Vaughan Middle School did. If you put a new Vaughan Middle School, Rodney Smith Ridge rezoning to Vaughan Middle School. So something to think about. So also I've been subbing at Sparks Middle School at my fair middle school to teach. So I'm not a substitute teacher anymore. So got that, but I will support full rebuild. Those communities deserve better. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And with that, we'll bring it back for a motion. Is anyone willing to jump into a motion mode? All right, Mr. Ivory.
I move that the Capital Funding Protection Committee approves the design phase funding for the Sparks Middle School reconstruction in the amount of $1 million as part of the 2025-2026 D Major Capital Projects Program, and move forward the recommendation to the Board of Trustees for approval.
Thank you, sir. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion by Member Ivory. A motion by Member Ivory, a second by Member Westner. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Passes unanimously. Great. We're moving right along. We'll go into item 3.01, public comment. This is our last public comment. Do we have any public comment?
Pablo Nava Duran.
All right, thank you.
All right, the meeting about to over soon, so that was quick. So I want to say congratulations, Charlie Barbie, for running for mayor. And I know, and on the look at the results, your campaign fell short. So I want to say congratulations on your campaign. That's a great one, great challenge. We need competitive. To hold Ed Lawson accountable. So thank you very much. And also this is your last year for Sparks City Council. Hopefully I'm going to be there. Hopefully you'll serve as City Council till Mary sworn in November. So thank you, Shirley Barbie. Thank you. And also, I want to say thank you, Adam Seasley and Tam Zimmerman for providing a rebuild Wooster High School and the surrounding areas. I know the word is a Wooster vocal, Pine Ridge Construction, not zone for Wooster, but we could make a better word, call it Ward 3 area. So thank you, Adam Seasley, for making a Wooster community much better, and also Spark Middle School community to have a new school. So thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other public comment?
No other public comment.
All right, with that, we'll bring it back to announcements of the next meeting. We're looking at August 6, 2026. I know you all probably want to continue meeting every other week, it seems like, but it's going to be August 26th. And by the way, I want to say thank you all for your flexibility on joining us during this CIP process. All right, with that, we're going to move on to item 3.03, adjournment. Thank you all for being here.